Thank you, Kristen. And thank you all for attending the Major to Career alum panel hosted by the Center for Career and Experiential Education. Some of you may know me. I see some familiar names and faces. I am Dr. Weinkoff Duranzo. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a teaching professor here in the psychology department at URI. So the panel is going to be recorded, as you just heard Kristen say. And I want to start by having each of our panelists introduce themselves. Tell us your pronouns if you choose, and your current position and title. Erica, would you like to begin?
Sure, I can begin. My name is Erica O'Connell. I currently work at a group practice located in Warwick, Rhode Island called Holistic Heart. And I am a licensed therapist and also an art therapist. So that's what I do there. I do a hybrid, so I'm in person and also remote sometimes as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And Kosen.
Thank you, doctor. My name is Kosen Koka. I reside in Massachusetts. I am a senior associate for Justice Systems Partners, which is a remote agency. And I'm very excited to be here and getting to chat with you all.
Awesome. Thank you, Kosen. It's wonderful to have you here with us. And Nathania.
Good afternoon. It's actually pronounced Nathania.
Nathania, sorry about that.
That's okay. So my name is Nathania Taminian, and I am a clinical supervisor for home-based services through Seven Hills. I oversee two programs, HBTS and PASS, based on the level of need for each client. And I service clients from the ages of 5 to 21.
Awesome. Thank you. And Steph, is Steph here?
I don't believe she's here just yet, but once she is, I'll kind of interject and have her introduce herself.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's get started with some questions. I would like for each of our panelists to just tell us a little bit about their career journey since you graduated from URI. Maybe tell us when you graduated from URI. What position did you start with right after graduation? And how did you get where you are today?
Sure, I can start. And I'm going to frame my whole, at least the early part of my journey, really by the fact that I had my daughter my senior year at URI. I graduated 2010. And that really, her being born really shaped what I was going to do, or what I had to do, I should say. When I was undergrad, graduating, junior year, my plan was to go get my, become a psychologist or psychiatrist, something like that. And then, like I said, I had my daughter and life shifted. I had to become a provider, and that became my main focus. So my first job, actually, I worked at Arbor. Um, it's a mental health hospital, actually, not too far from where I live now, called Arbor Fuller. And I was a mental health specialist. Worked there for honestly only about a year. And then I transitioned to working actually behind the walls at the state prison as a mental health slash substance abuse counselor. And I did that for about 2 years. And then once again, I transitioned working re-entry in Boston, Massachusetts, with the ATR program where I really, so I'm not sure if that's connected to what you do, Erica, but I saw ATR and that made me smile. Where I was really I was in the community re-entry. Like I said, I'm helping people just released from prison. And that job and the job prior within the incarceration space really kind of shifted my career trajectory, where I thought it would be primarily focused on psychology. I became more connected to the criminal justice field, which incorporates a lot of psychological aspects and psychology, and using those skills that I learned at URI and in the education I gathered there. And then after that, I became a probation officer for the state of Massachusetts. I did that for 5 years. And then I once again transitioned to the federal probation space, and I did that for about 5 years. Um, in that time, I got my master's, started my PhD, and I while doing all that, I transitioned to the role I am in now. I just finished my PhD in October, actually. Um, and I transitioned to the role I am now, which is a senior associate for Justice System Partners. Um, which I'm pretty sure we'll get more into exactly what I do, but that's so like I said, my journey was, but it all started because honestly, I had my daughter young, senior year of college, and it shifted what I wanted to do or how quickly I wanted to do it. But I think that was the best thing that ever happened to me because it's landed me where I am now, talking to you fine people. So um, yeah, that's kind of my journey in a nutshell, but I'm pretty sure we'll get more into detail about exactly what I do and how I do it.
Thank you. That was so interesting. And congratulations on your recent accomplishment with your
Thank you.
PhD. That's amazing. And, your journey really reflects, and I hope to hear more about it, Kosen. It really reflects the fact that our journey isn't linear, right? Like you may have a plan for this very linear approach, like I'm going to graduate from college and then I'm going to do A and then B and C. And it doesn't always work out that way by our own decision or by other circumstances, and that's okay.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and you're probably going to hear that narrative um, throughout my speaking today that it wasn't linear, and I'm happy it wasn't linear. But it's truly the word journey is probably the best word to describe what I'm gonna assume most of you go through. Like doctor said, it's you're gonna expect one thing and life's gonna happen and you're gonna have to shift, but always appreciate each opportunity that's put in front of you because it really does teach you a few things and kind of put you in the right direction.
Absolutely. I'm excited to hear more about your journey. And Erica, can you tell us a little bit about your journey from graduation from URI, that first position, and now where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. So I graduated in 2017. So a little bit later, I know you're talking about non-linear. I had a very linear path. It's the kind of person I am, but that's okay. So I went straight to grad school from URI. Decided to go to grad school in Colorado. So ATR, I wish it stood for something cool, but it just means art therapist. So like a register, it's the licensure for art therapy. So ATR, yeah, not connected, but I appreciate the connection. So that was kind of what I was going for. So I did a 3-year grad program, stayed in Colorado to make sure I got my licensure for to be a therapist. So I got there's LPC, here it's LMHC. And then I decided to move back home. I guess that's the nonlinear part of when you find your way back to Rhode Island, as so many people are not wanting to do. But hey, I think it's a good path. And then we all arrived back here. And but while I was in Colorado, I worked in eating disorder treatment. I also worked in hospice as well. And then I found my way in community mental health agencies. I had quite a few different experiences for a few years, and then working here, I settled at a group practice. So that's kind of the place I've been in the past couple of years and probably will be for a bit longer as well. So
Awesome.
yeah.
So you journeyed away and then you came back, and that is not uncommon, right?
Yeah.
Exploration is fun, and coming back home is always great too. Thank you. And how about you, Nathania? Did I say that correctly? Nathania?
Yes. I
Okay.
always like to say it kind of rhymes with like lasagna. Nathania, lasagna. It's a good way to remember it.
That's a good one.
But
Thank
similar
you.
to Erica, I actually graduated from URI in 2017 as well. So I did major in psychology and human development and family studies. My first job, I would actually say I got started while I was actually attending URI. So in 2014, I actually became a direct support professional through an agency called West Bay Residential. And essentially my role was to provide support to individuals with special needs, with activities of daily living. So it's supporting them with, personal care routines, meal preparation, medication administration, transporting them into the community, transporting them to provider appointments. And so I actually did that for quite some time. I recently resigned from that position, but I was there for about 10 years, just because I really enjoyed working with those individuals. But one of the great things was that the individuals ranged from different ages. So I worked with individuals who were in their 20s, their 40s, up until like their 80s. So that kind of inspired me to get into the field of working with the special needs population. When I graduated from URI in 2017, I worked at Bradley Hospital, the inpatient unit with children aged 4 to 12. So very interesting to see those dynamics of individuals coming in, especially some of those children that had higher needs. So I was able to kind of get that experience working in that situation, as well as continuing to work as a direct support professional at West Bay. Um, After I decided to leave Bradley, I actually went back to get my master's. So I'm licensed as a clinical social worker. And while I was doing that, I actually transitioned and worked full time at West Bay just so I could kind of, balance going to school as well as working. And the nice thing is that I went to Boston University, but they had a really great online program that was designated for individuals who worked simultaneously while going to school. And so once I graduated, I felt inspired to keep working with this population. So I actually applied to work for Seven Hills. So right now I work as a clinical supervisor overseeing HBTS and PASS services. So HBTS stands for home-based therapeutic services. So that's generally a higher level of care for individuals who are presenting with maladaptive behaviors, who are presenting with, needing support to regulate. And most times those individuals might need support with completing activities of daily living as well, which can range from toileting to, teaching them, safety skills while they're in the community. So it's based on what the client's needs are. So we really work, the programs I oversee work with parents directly. So we create a treatment plan based on the goals that they're, looking to build independence with. And then once they transition from that program, we have another program called PASS. So it's personal assistant supportive services, which is kind of like a step down from HBTS. Not as much clinical support needed, but again, those individuals are really just working to become independent with tasks. And that is more of like a community-based program, so practicing social skills and being able to give them the opportunity to socialize with peers. So that's kind of been my journey. I definitely have a special place in my heart for the special needs population. And like I mentioned before, I actually recently resigned from my position at West Bay just because now I'm, dedicating my full time to, working at, with Seven Hills. And future plans are to hopefully go back and pursue my PsyD, which is in the works. But again, balancing with work, trying to find a program that's appropriate. But yeah, that's pretty much my journey.
I love that. All three of you have very unique journeys that you've been on, very unique pathways, and yet they all started at URI. So I want to really kind of talk about two different things in the rest of the time that we have. One, I'd really like for you to share like what a typical day looks like for you in your role. What do you love about your current role? What's challenging about it? And then I really also want to make sure we get to some specifics about how URI prepared you. Was there a class or an internship like you were mentioning that may have really helped you clarify what was next for you? Were there certifications or clubs, that helped you? And then finally, what was it like to prepare for that first job in terms of like interview skills? Because a lot of our students that are here today are getting ready for that, right? And that can be really nerve-wracking, but how do you prepare for that as you're, making your way into that first position? So let's start with what a day looks like for you and what's challenging.
Sure. I'll go and start again. So a typical day for me really looks different depending on the needs of the moment. So just to give you background on what I do for work as a senior associate, um, So I work within systems, right? I work within criminal justice systems, and which involves working on a bunch of different projects. So just to give you a little bit of context, I work on currently five what we would call projects. Um, like a AV drug testing project that's out of Texas, Michigan, and another state that I can't remember right now. I work on a model that we're implementing across three different sites in three different states. I work on a Massachusetts specific project. So I travel a lot. Some weeks I travel way more, or some months I travel way more than I do other months. So a typical day for me involves supporting justice systems, staff, leaders, really about navigating change, right? So that might require me to hold trainings, put on presentations, go out and actually implement the practices that we're trying to change. I might spend some time meeting with leaders, frontline staff, or community partners. But each conversation, the focus is to help shape how the system, the criminal justice system, respond to people's needs in more thoughtful, supportive ways. I get to collaborate with a lot of colleagues across different states. We brainstorm, we troubleshoot, we share lessons learned. A typical like today, I've primarily focused on developing content. So I oversee the content development for what we call the coach referee model for change. And that requires developing what we call plays, game plans, and tools, right? So I basically develop concepts, I develop strategies, I develop practices that these different sites can utilize, primarily criminal justice and I should say community supervision, like probation and parole. Tools they can use and practices and strategies they can use to elevate their practices and how they do the work. Um, as far as rewarding, I mean, it's the work I do is really about helping people. And that kind of goes back to my psychology love and my background in psychology. But it's also about helping organizations, move from feeling stuck, especially criminal justice. The practices have been the same for, decades. So a lot of agencies feel stuck and feel like they have to keep doing things the way that it's been for the last 20, 30, 40 years. So my job on a daily basis is really trying to help them shift their perspective about how they can interact with their staff, but also with the people that that are involved within the system. Because as you all probably know, most individuals that are involved in the system get out of the system. And if we continue to treat people the same way and treat staff the same way, our outcomes are going to be the same. Recidivism rates are extremely high. So the goal of everything I try to do is to shift the system um, to reach the outcomes we want or the outcomes they want, right? Which is less people in prison, more people succeeding in life. Um, but that's also a challenge, right? And it's often because we're trying to push change in a system, like I said, that is slow to evolve. So there are real, structural and cultural barriers. If you ever work with any law enforcement agency or have connection or understand law enforcement agencies, it's all about structure and the culture that's in place. So trying to shift that towards a more human-centered approach and perspective is a challenge. It takes hard work, it takes compassion, it takes dedication. But I've learned, to hold, that those challenges are also opportunities to address, a lot of the systemic inequalities and issues that we see across the country. Um, and I'm part of that directly, and that's kind of why I left the probation work and went into the work I do now. Just as a quick side note, I'm also an adjunct professor at the University of Rhode Island for criminal justice. So I actually get to teach, the practical side, but also the more theoretical and, academic side of it as well. So I really love that I get to actually do the frontline work, but then I can actually go back and teach what I'm learning and, and actually use, I guess, my PhD for a little bit more than just frontline work as well.
Thank you. That was so informative. And I appreciate how you can now take those very practical skills, as you mentioned, that you have honed over the years in the frontline work, and you can bring that to the classroom. Because so many of our students, might think like, oh, CCJ sounds really interesting and psychology sounds really interesting. I want to study that, but don't necessarily have a real clear vision of what to do with it, which is why we're here. And so having you in the classroom is one way where they can hopefully make those connections, where they can see what you're doing outside of the classroom.
Yeah.
And
And I love that opportunity too. Like I always tell them, I didn't realize all the various opportunities within criminal justice work. And so I started doing criminal justice work, which I'm pretty sure is the same thing with psychology once you really get into it. But you learn so much. So I get to give them that knowledge, like, hey, you might be thinking the only type of, work you can do as a lawyer or an attorney, but I'm doing, research-based frontline work that's criminal justice, but also human impactful. So um, it's definitely, I definitely agree with you. Being able to give them that practical knowledge of what's out there and prepare and help prepare them is definitely something I love to do.
and I'm sure your students appreciate that.
Hopefully.
I have one more question for you, and then we're going to move on to another one of our panelists. But my question for you is, are there specific skills or experiences or classes that you would recommend to students that they could earn or work on to make them more competitive in the climate in that field?
Yeah, and so systems work, especially reform work, where you are working with, it's really people work. I work with people. I am trying to change the hearts and minds and approaches of people. So communication skills are very important. Being able to articulate yourself, but also not just from I know what I'm talking about and I'm the expert in the room. You really have to meet people where they are and try to understand the context of their work and being able to communicate within that context is very important. So that comes from, exposing yourself, in my opinion, to various opportunities and environments, right? Which is something I feel I was fortunate to, because I was thrown into, I have to support my daughter now and my wife, well, my girlfriend, then my wife now. I took on a lot of experiences that I probably would have never engage with, which I think offer me a lot of skills. And one of them being the ability to talk. I always say I feel I can connect with and speak to anybody on any level. When I worked in the court, I could talk to or as a probation officer, I could talk to the person on the street and you could put me in front of a judge and I felt comfortable just because of the various experiences I've had. But outside of verbal, your written skills for what I do have to be very strong. They don't have to be perfect, but if I can give one advice is if you can elevate, enhance your writing ability, I think that helps in any field, but especially what I do. It's huge. I write proposals, I write reports. Like I said, I write a bunch of content. So that's very important, whether you're working with justice involved individuals or like I said, writing a report, communication is essential. Second, your critical thinking and adaptability. Um, because my work is so dynamic, I'm constantly faced with like my director or my boss, I guess, is always throwing something new at us that we have to overcome as far as like a challenge he sees within the system, and then it's kind of put on us to come up with solutions. So you really have to, I would say, hone your critical thinking for the work I do, combined with your adaptability and be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. I know that's hard for a lot of people. Um, but that's, in my opinion, that's also how you grow, being uncomfortable. So it's okay if a large reason I took this job is because I did want to be uncomfortable. I was very comfortable doing probation for 10 years. So I took this role because I wanted to be uncomfortable because I truly believe that's how you grow as a professional, but also as a person. So a lot of the challenges I face are things I hadn't had to deal with. But because while at URI, I took some courses that really helped me with my critical thinking. I can really utilize what I learned back then, combined with what I've gained in life experience and professional experience to, you know, critically to think critically on my feet. And I'm the youngest of six, so I've always been adaptable in my life. That was just something, unfortunately, I was born into, being the youngest of six kids. So, and then the last thing I would say is experience working directly with people. Like I said, what I do is people work. So if if you want to kind of get into what I do, you have to be comfortable in front of people, which means you have to be comfortable with yourself, right? Because not everyone is going to. I walk into spaces where people don't want me to be there because what I'm preaching is against how they do it. Not preaching, but what I'm or training on or presenting is against how they do it. But you have to be comfortable in yourself and hold true to your values of why you're doing it. I believe in the humanizing of spaces and workspaces and individuals. So when I walk into more, I don't want to say hostile, but um, reluctant spaces, I am comfortable in what I'm doing. I believe in what I'm doing. So I'm able to connect with people that thought they could never connect with me, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody wants to be treated like a human. So yeah, so I would say strong communications, adaptability, critical thinking, and when you have the chance to work with in places that you can expand your experience with people, take that opportunity. Because regardless of what role you get in, especially in psychology, um, high likelihood you're going to have to work with people and help people. So I would recommend get comfortable in those spaces.
Thank you. What great advice, Kosen. Thank you. Thank you. Getting comfortable with ourselves so that we can be comfortable around others is like one of the core concepts that we talk about in psychology, right? Understand yourself, become more aware of who you are, and thus become hopefully more comfortable with who you are. So wow, you covered a lot, and I'm glad that
Sorry.
no, it was great. I loved it. And I'm so grateful you brought up critical thinking, because that is, a phrase we hear a lot of when we talk to employers and ask them, like, what do you want our students to have? What do you want? What skills do you want them to come out with? And you touched on them: critical thinking, oral communication, written communication. Those are the three, right? And those are often embedded in a lot of the classes that you take here at URI, implicitly often, those papers you have to write, those presentations you have to give, critiquing or analyzing the reading are designed to do just that, to hone those skills. So I appreciate that you brought those up. So how about you, Nathania? Let's see, where do we start? What does a typical day look like? Challenges and rewards, and then what specific skills did you get from URI that you think would help other students be competitive?
Yeah, so my typical workday is different every single day. So I do a hybrid of working from home as well as going to meet with clients in their homes. So again, like I mentioned, I do home-based work. But one of my primary roles is to supervise the direct support professionals that are going into the home. So every client that we get is assigned to work with a direct support professional. And so they work one-on-one with the client to build those independent skills, to work on goals that are in their treatment plan. So we work a lot with the parents, I work a lot with the staff. So my role is to, make sure that the clients are getting the support that they need, whether it's, managing their behaviors, providing strategies, recommendations. I do meet with staff depending on the program. So for HBTS, I go out to the home every month and I will conduct a observation of shift. And so that's generally observing the staff work with the client on the goals that were identified with the parent. 8 Pass is a little different. We go out every other month and it's a little bit more flexible because we have the opportunity to meet with the parent and then meet with staff. So my primary role is just to make sure that staff have that support. I also meet with staff in office-based supervisions as well. So that's a time for them to bring out any concerns that they have or any support that they need. One of the great things that COVID did was allow the opportunity to work from home. So we have the capacity to meet with families wherever they're at. So whether it's going to their home or whether it's, meeting with them via telehealth, it gives that opportunity to kind of have that continuity of care. So to describe a typical work day, some days I'm working from home, meeting with families via telehealth. Some days it's just working on documentation. So I write the treatment plans that the clients work on with their goals. So that could mean revising treatment plans, revising goals, preparing and identifying materials that the staff are going to use with the clients. So they run lessons. So they could be, teaching them coping skills, regulation skills, completing a showering routine, again, based on what the client's needs are. So essentially being able to, provide that support. And so oftentimes I'm working from home most days, and then other times I might work from home the beginning of the day, and then, I might go into the office or I might be going into the home. I have a preference to go out to the homes just because you really get to see the client where they're at. So you get to see, them in their natural environment. It can be invasive sometimes. So it's a lot of working with parents to work through some of the struggles that they have in terms of behavior management. So I would definitely say that is a challenge because parents often don't always agree. I am one of those individuals that I'm always trying to provide recommendations and strategies. Some parents are more willing to try things than others. But again, it's a sense of like trial and error to see what works best for the client. One of the rewarding things is, just being able to see clients in their home, building the rapport with them. Most of the clients on my caseload I've known since I started. So just being able to see them grow and build their skills of independence. As they work through some of the goals, they end up mastering the goals. So then sometimes those goals are removed from the plan. And then we might discuss other skills that they work on. Like I mentioned, I have clients as young as 5 to clients who are 21. So once they turn 21, they actually age out of services. But right now I've got a lot of teenagers on my caseload. So it is a challenge being able to find what works for them and, dealing with the resistance of, maybe they don't want to work on a task right now. So really meeting them where they're at, providing choices. Some clients are verbal, some are nonverbal. So getting creative with how we communicate, whether they have a communication device or if they're using like basic picture exchange systems. A lot of my clients range from having autism, ADHD, anxiety, depression, Down syndrome. I also have some other clients that some diagnoses are not quite known. So, researching about these diagnoses and how I can best support the clients. So there's not really a set day. Sometimes days can be hectic. Some days they're very calm. It really just depends. I could get a phone call from a parent, so I might need to walk them through and support them in that sense. Or with staff, that I might get a call that one of the individuals maybe was aggressive. So then kind of walking them through the process of, being able to take the right steps, making sure that, they're able to know how to de-escalate the clients. And then I would definitely say with this work comes a lot of patience, a lot of compassion, and a lot of empathy, but also needing to set boundaries and knowing when to say no. You are working with clients in their home, so it gets tricky, because there are different settings, such as school, outpatient, that there are set guidelines that you kind of go by. But when you're going into somebody's home, you might have families you've been working with for years that are saying, hey, would you like to have something to eat or something to drink? So like just being able to say, nope, that's not what I'm here for, and bringing it back to the client. I do have some parents that sometimes they might think that me coming out is a bit of a session for them to kind of unload some of the struggles they're going through that might not necessarily have to do with the client. So it's always kind of reeling it in back, redirecting them, letting them know, hey, like, how is this kind of pertaining to what's going on with the client? And so kind of having to sometimes stop parents and, bring them back. But I would definitely say working with parents is a challenge because some are more open than others. and it can be a challenge sometimes just because, we want to make sure that the client's getting the best that they need at the end of the day. So we generally try to work together as a team. So for each client, there is a clinician, a treatment coordinator, and then the direct support staff that work with the client directly. So obviously, the clinician and treatment coordinator aren't out on a frequent basis. Some of these staff work with the clients Monday through Friday after school, whereas we come out every month or, every other month based on what program that they are in. So I would definitely say there's a lot of push and pull. There's a lot of that patience component, and just being able to understand, you might have a plan for something and it might change. So I know, Kasim had mentioned about adaptability. So being able to adapt, to different situations, different needs of the clients. Sometimes these clients might present with a behavior that's completely new, and and we have to kind of figure out how we can support them and, make sure that they're getting the right way to kind of work through that. So it definitely can be one of those things where it's no day is ever the same. I would definitely also say, at URI, I took a lot, I double majored in human development and family studies. So that gave me a really good background of human development, as they always say, from womb to tomb. So it's helpful to know what are the standard uh, skills that individuals go through, and then, being able to identify, maybe they're not quite at that level, but, modifying how we can get them to that level. But I think one of the greatest things is just being able to see that that progress, especially when, you have clients that maybe were nonverbal and now they're talking and they're able to regulate their feelings and use coping skills versus defaulting to maladaptive behaviors. So I would definitely say, having that background was really helpful. I also did an internship when I was at URI, which I believe we were the guinea pigs for that first cohort. I had did an internship in Ireland. I think it was ITR 301, I believe. They had the opportunity for individuals to travel to another country and do an internship over there. So I remember I did a 2-month internship in Ireland at a day program over there working with individuals who had special needs. So it was like interesting to see how their dynamics are compared to here, because working as a DSP with West Bay, very similar but very different. So I guess you can say it's full circle. I started off as a DSP, now I supervise DSPs. And so kind of having that background and understanding, being in that position and then kind of being able to work my way up, I definitely would say that was an eye-opening experience for me, because again, it was like study abroad, but then also getting that experience and seeing, how different the different culture, works with that population. So
Awesome. That sounds so interesting. And I'm glad you brought up the study abroad, because I always encourage students to study abroad.
amazing,
Right.
amazing opportunity.
If you have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So earlier you mentioned telehealth as one of the good things we got from COVID. So I want to bring that over to Erica, because I have a feeling maybe telehealth is part of your practice, possibly, and see if you can speak to that, but then also your day-to-day activities in your role, what's rewarding, what's challenging, and then also what at URI prepared you? What would you recommend to our students here that they take in terms of classes, internships, certifications, study abroad to prepare them?
Yeah. URI offered a lot, and I really appreciated everything I did. I did the honors program. I did a program called Eureka, which I'm not sure if it's still around, but it was working with eating concerns on campus. So that helped me get some different trainings as well. I worked a little bit with the Heather Fund, and I did alternative spring break trips and volunteering clubs. So I really appreciate those experiences. Those were really, again, yeah, like everybody's been saying, working with people, it's important to expand our world and figure out where to meet people where they're at and stay educated. And also, I think, something that isn't prioritized enough, but if you are in psychology, it's important to go to therapy yourself, especially if you're going to become a therapist. I always recommend that. I was at that counseling center at URI, URI. It's important to do the work that you're expecting others to do for you or to do as well. And so you're not coming into this with an ego or a power dynamic. You know, we're all just on the same playing field here. And it's important to really have that empathy in such a real world way of like how hard it is. And that's not, it can be vulnerable. And so you need to be vulnerable as well. So I really promote that as well while you're at URI, and maybe you're under your parents' healthcare plan. Like you should really utilize that and go to therapy yourself if you can. It is accessible at URI, so I always really appreciated that as well. It's not always something offered. And my day to day is mostly in person now. I think people are wanting to come back in person. So I haven't noticed that shift, but I still do telehealth, and it does help with accessibility for a lot of things. Since I'm an art therapist, I do prefer in person just for access to art materials, but it can be done over telehealth as well with a little bit more preparation. I see probably around like 6 to 8 clients a day, sometimes a little less, sometimes, you know, not usually more than 8, 9 on like a real big day. And I see people for hour-long sessions, and we do a variety of things. And these are people I might see twice a week. I might see them once a month. I might see them every other week. I might do phone calls to schools, like connecting with social workers or teachers or psychiatrists. So I might do like coordination of care. I have to do documentation, which is fun, and something you have to do as well for insurance. I might be talking to insurance if they're trying to tell me they're not going to cover my client. So then I have to be like, you have to cover my client. They're doing good work, and kind of do all of these fun things. And I also like to connect with my coworkers, you know, just like I think it's important to learn from other people. Everybody has different modalities for therapy. So what I'm bringing might be totally different than what somebody else brings. Like at Holistic Heart, we have like a yoga therapist and a dance therapist. We have people who do like brain spotting. Like there's so many different sectors you can go into in this role. So I really promote, you know, people exploring all the different things that you can do, finding something you're passionate about. I work with people ages 12 and up. So I see a variety of people with different diagnoses. The setting I'm in is not a crisis situation, so we don't tend to deal with constant crises. Like it's not like a locked unit. It's just people are coming into the office with varying problems. So if there is a crisis, I do refer for inpatient or hospital care. So, which can happen, but yeah, I really enjoyed. I think I took like thanatology at URI. I thought that was really cool and helpful, especially, and it kind of made me confident going into hospice work. So sometimes you never know what is going to catch you and be interesting. Oh, and I also double majored in art, which helped me build a portfolio for grad school. So yeah, I would say lots of exploration.
Yeah, I think that is also great advice. So we heard some different bits of wisdom from all three of you. We heard about the importance of good communication skills and writing and critical thinking and people skills and the value in studying abroad and exploring different coursework or course options here at URI. All of these help us become more well-rounded and hone our ability to take perspective, right? Which when we're working with human beings in any setting, being able to take perspective is really essential, right? So we have just a few minutes left. I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for our students that are here to ask some questions. So maybe this is the time to open up and let the students ask questions of our panel. How is that going to work, Kristen?
Yeah, so any students that have questions, please feel free to either put them in the chat or unmute. Chris, I think there was a couple more questions on that sheet.
Oh yes, you're right. I missed a couple.
No, not a problem at all. It was great conversation. I just figure while we have the time, I know that you have a class at 5, so I want to be mindful of your time as well, Chris. So maybe if there's a favorite of the questions that it's left.
Um, what is something you wish you knew before graduating college, or advice you have for students as they get ready to enter the workforce? That's a good one.
Um, I guess I knew this, but it just became more real. Your first job, don't expect it to be your dream job. It's kind of obvious, but you know, especially fresh out of college, you're kind of working your way up. But I will say, it might not be your dream job, and I kind of touched upon this, but it does teach you a lot about yourself, your strengths, what kind of impact you want to make. I used to think by graduation I have it all figured out, and as you guys have heard, my life didn't go that way, but it went a way I'm happy it did, and your career path evolved. So my advice would uh be open to learning from every experience, even the ones that don't seem ideal. Show up. I think I don't know if it was somebody, just might have been Erica. Show up curious, stay humble, don't be afraid to ask questions, even if you think they're silly. But most importantly, build relationships. Um, that'll take you further than anything on your resume. Not to say your resume doesn't matter, but if you can build relationships and people know you, know your work, your values, your goals, that'll probably take you further than anything on a piece of paper. So that's probably the number one thing I learned, and I try to use and utilize as much as I can the relationships I build. Because I love the job I do now, but I do want to at some point go full time, in something else, maybe academia, I don't know yet. But so, building those relationships is very important.
Such good advice. And the idea that that first job out of college is not necessarily the dream job, not likely the dream job, is also really, I think, really pertinent. For so many college students, you may have, heard as you're growing up this idea like, go to college, it'll help you prepare for that great job afterwards. And yes, that's true, but it's not necessarily the first job. It's a journey, right? And often that first job, you know, might lead to a very different second job or third job or back to college. So the path can be very unique, and you have to be open to that and flexible, right? A couple of people have asked questions in the chat specific to grad school. So one is, how many grad schools did you apply to? And the other is, for those of you who have doctorates, do you recommend getting your master's first and then going? Or do you wish you'd gone straight into the doctorate?
As far as the doctorate, well, first I applied to 3 schools and eventually realized I could only go to one because it fit my structure. I needed a hybrid school, so online and in person, just because I worked full time. I have a family. I couldn't spend every hour in class. So I was fortunate enough to find a hybrid school that accomplished what I was looking for. And so based on the type of school you go to, some schools connect your master's with your PhD. Some, require you to come in with a master's. So it's really about, I would say, what you're looking for, right? Are you looking, some people like to get experience before they go back and focus on their PhD. That's what I did. But as you've all heard, everybody's path is different. If you have the ability to go straight into a PhD and you know you're going to be more academic, I would recommend you do that. If you want to be more of what I do, which is practical with some academia, having some years where you work will probably be more beneficial because obviously you have the practical skills and you can bring that to the table. So that's just my experience and advice on that. But you really have to figure out what works best for you. And 2 years from now, your life might be complete. You might have a kid like me, and that completely changes what you want to and how and when you can do certain things.
Yes, thank you. That was great, great response. I think most of our psychology students, hear from a variety of people. Like if you're going to go into a career in psychology, you need to have graduate work of some sort. And that can be true, in some instances. But I often tell students like only go for the PhD or the PsyD if that's really needed for the path that you have, because there are some great careers, very great, meaningful careers that you can experience with a master's degree, right?
I
And
second that. A lot of people I work with, even people above, I guess, my title, only have their masters. So you could do a lot with your masters. A master's is amazing. So don't feel like you need to go get a Psych D or a PhD. It's absolutely not necessary. It's more about basically what you want to do, right? So I wanted to do a little bit of academia, which is why I went after it. But I probably would have never gone after it if that wasn't something I was passionate about.
a good point.
Chris, I know that you probably need to run to class, but these are mostly my students. So if you need to run, I'm happy to hold out for a couple minutes. I just want to make sure that the questions that the students have um, are answered. If you need to run.
I probably should. Yes, thank you so
Okay.
much.
I know you have class in 5 minutes, so I want to be very mindful of that.
I did tell him I might be a little late, and it's right down.
Okay.
There's a couple of levels, so I'm not far. But yes, thank you so much to everyone. This was really fun for me. I hope it was informative. It was great to meet our panel. Thank you so much. I appreciate your valuable experiences and your time. So I appreciate that very much. And thank you,
Thank
Chris.
you, Chris.
Thank you.
All right, panelists. So we do have another question. If you went abroad during your undergrad, what did you gain from the experience? I think one of you did, right?
Yeah, that was me.
Okay.
To answer the first question in terms of pursuing your master's before jumping into the next chapter if you choose to go for your PhD. The rationale for me going to get my master's of social work is with that, once you have a certain amount of supervised hours, you can become what's called a licensed independent clinical social worker. So you can actually it's very similar to having like a PhD PsyD, but you're able to open up your own practice. You don't need to have somebody supervising you. My rationale for going to get my PsyD is it's always been one of my goals in my dreams. But I technically don't have to just because I'm in the process of working towards getting my LI, which would mean I don't need to have anybody supervising me. And my goal is in the future to possibly, transition into doing more of like the outpatient therapy and working with clients in that setting, or who knows, maybe working in their homes with them. But in terms of, so I recommend it, it's based on whatever you want to do and what works well. But a way to cheat having to go to get your PhD would be, pursuing that a master's of social work, because then you are able to get independently licensed, which is very similar to, a licensed mental health clinician, depending on what you want to do. And there's more opportunities to try different avenues. But in terms of, I would say going abroad was probably very life-changing because I was able to learn how to be on my own. I'm very family oriented, so it gave me the opportunity to essentially grow up and learn, about myself, and which I think was crucial. Given this is a really confusing time, you're figuring out what you want to do, you're figuring out, what you want to do for the future. And it can be tricky to be stuck in that. But it gave me the opportunity to really learn about myself. And one of the nice things was it was a very small group of people. It was like 9 individuals. And so we all kind of had each other, and we were all from different majors. So it was an opportunity to get to know each other and have that support system. I don't know if it's changed over the years, but I remember we had, I forgot, our facilitator went with us for like the first week, and then we were kind of left on our own for like 7 weeks. So that really gave us that chance to build those independence skills. So I definitely think if you are looking to find out about yourself or maybe learn how to be on your own without needing other individuals, such as parents, I would say is a great opportunity. And also get to see the world, get to see different cultures. Ireland is gorgeous. I would say, I had never been there, and it was eye-opening to see, the culture shock and see how, individuals do things differently. And I would say it's definitely worth it, especially if you can do it while getting credits, which is always powerful versus just traveling. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Appreciate that. Erica, did you have any additions for some of those grad school questions?
I applied to 5 grad schools. Art therapy was like a pretty niche thing, so there weren't as many like public or state school options. So I kind of had to spread my feelers out. And yeah, just following up on this idea, the PhD. I personally didn't make that choice because it wouldn't like change my salary or change access to care or change any of the things that I'm doing personally. So for me, it was kind of like, don't take out another loan. But again, if you really want to do academia or if you ever want to do research, that is something that you would probably need. So that would be really cool to do for people. But I would say, yeah, like be mindful about what your goal is and what you need to get there. Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. And then I believe Kostin was the only one that answered that. What would you, something that you wish you knew before grad school or advice entering the workforce, if either of you wanted to thought about something? I saw the wheels turning as she asked that question.
Yeah, I mean, wheels turning, I would, similar to what everyone's saying, prepare yourself to not make a ton of money right away. Prepare yourself to really need to network a lot. Like applying for jobs has changed a lot. Your resume doesn't get looked at very often. What is very important is messaging people on LinkedIn. What is important is going and meeting people in person, going to like networking events. Things have really changed. So I would say, as painful as it is for so many people after we've kind of holed in after the pandemic, like you got to get out there and meet people and have experiences. And that's what I, wish was maybe told to me prior, is how important getting, in-person experiences is. And yeah, preparing yourself to not be successful right away, which is a little scary, but it's good to know. Right. That's my advice.
Great advice. Nathania, anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I would definitely say nothing ever goes as planned. So don't feel like you need to have a set plan. It's okay to try different things and test the waters. One thing I wish, is somebody would have said was, the importance of that work-life balance. So making sure you're taking care of you, doing things that you like, not always focusing so much on the working aspect. Life is short, being able to expose yourself to different opportunities and, different individuals. Going to study abroad was something I never thought of. And then I took a chance and was probably one of the best experiences of my life. So just, remembering that, you have to take care of you. You are important, especially if you have others depending on you. You cannot take care of other people unless you take care of you. So I'd always say that's one thing that I love about my agency is there's a really good work-life balance. So definitely as well, when you're looking into jobs, having a job that, might offer benefits for, nice, like appropriate time off for you to unwind and definitely take advantage of that, and not focus so much on, work, just because people forget that there are other things to life besides just making money, tapping into hobbies, trying things you've never done before.
And going to therapy, as Eric said. Well, I think that was a really great ending. I really appreciate the three of you for coming back and sharing your authentic stories and your experiences with the students. A lot of great nuggets of advice in there. This will be recorded for any students that weren't able to attend today, and I know that it'll be really valuable and rewarding for them to watch. So, thank you for coming back and spending time with the students. And with that, I'm going to stop recording.